Hello, friends. Welcome. I'm here today to talk to you about something very near and dear to me, and that is longevity. So, in other words, how do we live to our full potential, time wise, but also how do we live to our full potential, quality wise? So, living a long, healthy life, very, very important. So, the research now tells us that the outer limit of potential human life could be somewhere between 115 and 150 years, and maybe there is no limit. But in any regard, we want to know just what we can do to reach our very fullest potential. So I'm here today to talk to you about a few things that I think are key to enjoying a long and healthy, good quality life. So the first thing that I want to show you is the book that I use for all things longevity inspired, and that is a book called The Blue Zones by Dan Buettner, and he is a fellow for National Geographic. He has a great TED Talk and a great website too, so use this as a resource. It's a really, really good read, and it's super inspiring. Some of the stuff in the wellness world gets to be a bit discouraging, and you start to think, well, gosh, what can I eat? Or, what what is it that I can actually do, right? Because there are so many things we're told not to do. So this is a very inspiring read. So the first thing I want to talk about is maintaining a healthy diet in regards to longevity. And of course, that can mean so many different things. And I talk about this ad nauseum in all of my cooking classes and with all of my health coaching clients, and that means something different for every person. So in a very general sense, I would say that the meaning of a healthy diet is something in the sort of neighborhood of being balanced. I think of two key words, one of which is an alkaline diet, and the other of which is the anti-inflammatory diet. So eating a diet that is rich in foods that are largely alkaline, and that of course includes lots of things green. So one of the things I'd like to show you is one of my favorite products that maybe I've featured before for some of you. This is called chlorella. It is a sea algae, and it's a powder. It's a powdery green substance that you put into water or juice and shake to dissolve and guzzle it down. Super alkaline, super high in protein, great for detoxifying. There just are so many good things about it. But that's one of my sort of key pillars in the alkaline diet. And really having balance, so limiting processed foods, refined sugars. And actually, of course, latest research tells us that a modest amount of coffee and red wine is okay, but of course we have to define what is modest. So maybe a couple of cups of coffee, maybe one glass of wine a couple times a week, and anything beyond that, you're sort of reducing the healthful benefit. So that's that in the way of diet, and I'm not going to go into any more specifics on that today. Regular exercise, and maintaining a regular exercise program looks different for everybody, but something that does incorporate some high intensity training, so getting your heart rate up, sweating, things that are good for agility, flexibility. So I always recommend people include things like Pilates and yoga and stretching, even if you're already doing a high load of cardio intensive exercise. But really, most importantly, find something that is fun, something that you'll enjoy doing. And that could include a team sport. It could include playing with your kids outside, gardening. There just are so many different activities that count as physical exercise. The other thing I would like to outline, of course, is 8 hours of sleep a night, and that is the magic number. And it's not just about quantity, but of course quality. And maybe I can talk in another capsule about getting quality sleep. It's really tricky and becomes even more tricky as we get older and live these stressful lives. Speaking of which, stress reduction is another big one when it comes to addressing longevity. So the things that come to mind for me in stress reduction are incorporating things like meditation, daily naps, and they could just be 10 to 15 minute cat naps, yoga. I'm a big fan of yoga, and something in particular in the world of yoga that I think is super useful and very healing is nostril breathing. So instead of breathing through the mouth, you're actually breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. So it looks something like this. So it's long and slow, and you almost make like a Darth Vader type noise as you're breathing out. The breath goes across the back of the throat. And this type of breath, the reason that I think it's important to actually show you the type of breath that I'm talking about is that this type of breath is actually known to initiate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that part of the nervous system that triggers our system to rest and repair, which is very different from the sort of fight or flight response that we experience when we're in that sympathetic nervous system mode, which is what most of us are in most of the time. So the nostril breathing is super important. You can do that if you're sitting in traffic, if you're in a stressful situation or interaction with somebody, and it immediately triggers this relaxation response. So I think it's incredibly effective, even to just do a few minutes a day. Close friendships and healthy relationships, I think that is something most people, it doesn't come into their periphery, but when we've looked at all of the longevity research, that's something that does sort of stand out as being significant, is having not necessarily a great quantity, but quality relationships and people that you see regularly and who keep after you and you keep after them. And so that's super, super important. And the relationships that we do have, making sure that they're very healthy. Reducing our toxic load is another super important thing we can do. That is, again, a whole nother topic for another capsule. But when we talk about reducing our toxic load, we're of course addressing things like food. So pesticides, heavy metals, things like that. Also personal care products and household cleaning products, which, I have to say are largely unregulated, all of those things. And so we have to do our part in really doing the research, checking labels, making sure that the things that we're putting on our bodies, right, or breathing in, have minimal amounts of toxicity. And then of course, I would say it's worthwhile to really consider your water supply. So is your municipal water supply clean and adequate? And you can get the water supply independently tested. And if you're not happy with the results, you can always look into alternative water sources. So in my house, we do reverse osmosis water that we carry in from our health food store, and we just refill containers. And, that's a whole nother conversation too. Water, I could go on and on about. But clean water is super important. And then the last thing I want to talk about, this is very interesting. It's become very trending, and it's something you'll hear talked about a lot right now, is the whole concept of caloric restriction or intermittent fasting. There's a lot of interesting research being done. And caloric restriction or intermittent fasting is one of the only things actually that has been proven to slow the aging process. So it's a little bit, there's a lot that I could go into on that topic of caloric restriction. And I don't mean starving yourself. I don't even necessarily mean not eating for days at a time. But the whole idea of intermittent fasting, or the fasting mimicking diet. You can look those things up and research them on your own. The whole idea there is that you're tricking your body into thinking that it's going into a fasting mode. And what happens when your body goes into a fasting mode is just all kinds of interesting things. First of all, your body gets to do certain repair work that it just doesn't get to do when it's constantly digesting. So when you're really resting the body and giving it that sort of intermittent fast, and I count like 12 to 15 hours as an intermittent fast. So if you eat dinner at 6 o'clock in the evening and then don't eat breakfast until 9 or 10 the next morning, that is a wonderful 12 to 16 hour intermittent fasting window that allows your body to initiate certain processes that it wouldn't otherwise be available to do. So the other thing that starts to happen is that we regulate certain gene expression at that point. So you go into repair mode, certain genes are turned on and off, and this really starts to change the way that our bodies use stored fat and the way that they regulate insulin and all of these very interesting things that have then been tied to the slowing down of the aging process. So anyway, I encourage you to look into some of these things on your own. We have covered a lot of territory. So take a bit of that and chew on it and see what you come up with. But that's it. So I wish everybody a long and happy and healthy life. But until next time, hope this was helpful. Take care, friends. Bye.